Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining Mechdyne today as we have our next Key Opinion Leader webinar. And today's topic is Visualization Insights. We have one of our solution architects, Ryan Young, joining us today, and he will share some valuable information that he has learned over the course of his career. Ryan has been working with visualization technology for the last 10 years. He started his career as a visualization expert at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia, supporting the researchers with their utilization of visualization for sharing their research data in multiple display environments, including a world-leading 100 million pixel immersive cave. He then moved to the UK, where he helped a global automotive company with embedding visualization tools into their design process to bring cars to market quicker and more efficiently. For the last 2 years, Ryan has been working as a solution architect, helping design visualization systems to fit into our clients' workflows in order to bring them substantial return on their investment. We're so thankful to have Ryan join us today and share his vast knowledge with us. And at the end of Ryan's presentation, we will have a short Q&A session, and we'll be happy to take your questions. Just use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. And without further ado, Ryan, go ahead and take the floor.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me talk today about visualization insights. I'd like to start a visualization insights presentation with the John Snow Broad Street pump map. I won't be able to go into all the detail, so I invite everyone to look up the story when you have a chance. This is London in the Victorian era, and London back then was an experiment for all large cities. Can people really live so close together, and what are the implications on public health and waste management? And frankly, the experiment wasn't going so well. There was a cholera outbreak in 1854, and the belief at the time was that bad smells from poor waste management was causing this disease. John Snow had different thoughts. What he decided to do was visually overlay the deaths per household onto a street map of the area. What you're able to see on the map are individual black bars, each black bar representing a death in a household, of death from cholera in a household. And they started to notice a pattern that all of the deaths in the area were circling this water pump on Broad Street. Eventually, the map led them to investigate the pump and found that indeed the cholera was being spread from this pump. Waste was seeping into it. And eventually, this map convinced authorities and critics that the disease was indeed waterborne and not airborne. Directly or indirectly this map leading to systematic changes on how big cities handle waste management, making big cities possible in the future. So to summarize, visualization is visually representing data, typically communicating something we can't verbalize very easily. I like to think of visualization as exposing the obvious, right? It's just overlaying different pieces of information to come to a conclusion. So in that sense, it's a diagnostic tool as well as a communications tool, helping anyone understand complicated topics. So a bit more detail on visualization. I think most would agree, based on the previous example, that visualization is much more than a big display. Visualization is engaging, or good visualization is engaging. Your data and your content is important, and it's very important to you, but sometimes very difficult to communicate why it should be important to anyone else. Engaging non-experts and telling the story without having to explain every minute detail This is engaging visualization. Immersive and interactive engagements with content, being able to manipulate data and explore it in real time, is going to resonate more with folks than just passively receiving that information from, say, a PowerPoint presentation. Great visualization involves the users, and great visualization is a showcase environment. A little bit of wow factor and some excitement to tell a story goes a long way. Visualization is enlightening. As I mentioned before, exposing the obvious. You know, the John Snow map could have just been a list of addresses in an Excel spreadsheet with a number of deaths, and we could, you know, sort it by deaths or sort it by location. But that doesn't tell us anything until we laid those deaths out onto a map, you know, the fusion of those two data types. And then we also, by creating the scale of the problem, you know, by highlighting deaths per household, we had a very enlightening visualization to say, hey, there's a problem in the middle of this area. And that's what gives us the aha moment, right? The awe-inspiring aha. Hey, something else is going on here. We should have a closer look. Visualization is collaborative. Multidisciplinary teams being able to expose insight by questioning, you know, okay, I can see this, but have we questioned it this way? Or can we look at it in another way? What happens when we do this? So this collaborative capability with visualization brings folks together to question things and come up with new insights. And is absolutely critical about visualization is it brings the folks studying the problem and the folks living with the problem together in a way that they can then understand what's going on and come up with solutions together. Visualization is a very powerful conduit for doing that. So how are visualization spaces being used and what are their benefits? Firstly, we're able to simulate very challenging and dangerous scenarios. There's little to no risk of exploring and interrogating virtual data, virtual prototypes or digital twins. And, you know, studies find that every hour we spend in a design phase, every hour we spend analyzing data is time saved in delivery, right? Every hour we spend planning for a disaster leads to lives saved when something bad happens. So being able to simulate and view different scenarios is very powerful to simulate rather than experience in real life. Enable multidisciplinary and real-time collaboration to gather insights. Again, very important, very beneficial thing about a visualization system. It becomes a rallying cry to folks. It's a culmination of multidisciplinary research, and it's a culmination of everyone's efforts. I'll say it again, you know, bringing folks that are studying the problem and bringing folks that are living with the problem together to solve it. Present findings. Visualization systems are great for presenting findings in humanistic and intuitive ways. This is a very tough one to explain, but I guess that's the point. Some things are better explained visually than verbally. And Jon Snow's map is a great example, trying to verbalize what's going on to the critics and the folks that don't want to hear about your hypothesis is very challenging, but visualizing it and presenting it in a way that resonates with people is very impactful. You know, getting difficult concepts to visualizing difficult concepts in a way that everyone can understand is very impactful. And visualization leads to high impact actions, either directly or indirectly. visualization is making our lives better and safer, whether it's civil engineers looking at disaster scenarios on buildings, automotive engineers looking at new concepts for chassis or chassis designs, chemical engineers, city planners, and emergency response. They're all using visualization to understand and develop solutions to really important problems. So visualization requires data, of course, a way to process that data, and a way to report and display that data, visualize the data. And software and software integration is an absolute key enabler for all of that. So I thought I'd give a quick overview of kind of the landscape and strategies for software, visualization software. So native software is essentially where your data is stored in the same software that visualizes it. So it's great if your software has a visualization engine, so you're capturing data and you're visualizing it in the same engine. Things like simple infographics, reporting tools on complex databases, some CAD applications, building information management systems, and even computational fluid dynamic systems. These are all applications that will ingest raw data and visualize it to some extent. Especially if the requirement is just to show it on a big screen, it's direct to display. There's no data loss. It's quite an easy win. Some of the challenges with using native software is that native software is usually a closed platform, meaning it's only going to accept data it was designed for, and it's going to only output visualizations it was designed for. So very little to no fusion capabilities between different data types without potentially significant software integration to enable any fusion. Another strategy is graphics interception. So this is where you might have 3D geometry or CAD, and you need to display it across visual displays, across multiple visual displays, or across a computer cluster quickly and easily. It enables 3D data to port directly into virtual reality or across a clustered or distributed computer system. So things like caves, like we have in the picture, or multi-user virtual environments, multiple people using HMDs. The real benefit of using graphics interception is that it's real time. There's no data prep. So if your data is in continual flux, meaning that it changes a lot on a day-to-day basis, a good example of this, is automotive design. So cars getting design changes, daily or weekly. This is a great way to visualize that data because there's no preparation or no data preparation. Some of the challenges, very expensive, especially if you're trying to support multiple data types. The more data types, the more packages we try and support becomes quite a lot more expensive. Finally, I want to touch on game engine and especially the fusion benefits. So I'm not sure if it was by design or by accident, but game engines have become great visualization enablers for almost all industries. What's great about it is that you're able to ingest multiple different data types, whether it's 3D geometry or LiDAR or just 2D, just raw data, informational data. We're able to ingest all of those different data types and overlay them on top of each other. Built-in physics engine, built-in rendering engines create for really realistic environments. What's also great is you can get really creative with the interactive aspects of your visualization. So creating interesting user interfaces, creating custom user experiences, even to the extent where easily layering data and being able to scrub different data sets within context of each other. So extremely versatile ways to navigate through the data and create very interesting interactive visualizations. It's very cost effective, and in some cases in a lot of cases it's free to use the game engine, and some cases it's very cheap to use the game engine. Some of the challenges, though, with the game engines is that it requires data preparation. It requires ingest of different data types, and it requires the creation of the actual visualization environment. So if your data is continuously in flux, it becomes very challenging. But if your data is quite stable and you can invest the time in creating the story and the user experience, fantastic way to visualize data. I just want to touch again on enabling multidisciplinary collaboration. Arguably, the most important aspect of visualization is bringing people together to discuss ideas and interpret the data, both locally in room with each other and remotely. Enabling that communication between experts, laymen, customers, bringing everyone together to understand, something. So you've got things like one-to-one engagement. This might be a group visualization experience. The integration of large format displays, head-mounted displays, tablet devices, laptop devices. The key to one-to-one engagement is that everyone in the room has access to manipulate data, to interact with it, to change it, to investigate it from their perspective, and of course to collaborate locally and remotely, effectively sharing their ideas on what they are seeing on screen. Of course, one-to-many, right? The dissemination of research findings, very important. When it comes to visualization, what's extremely important is when designing large format displays for visualization presentation, is that those large format displays are integrated into the same visualization compute systems that maybe the one-to-one engagement systems use, so that in a large presentation environment, you're still able to navigate data, present it in interesting ways, take Q&A and navigate directly to certain points in the data that justify your point or support your point. It's a completely different experience than just cycling through PowerPoint slides. We're able to actually present real insight to the audience when we use these live engines. Finally, I want to talk about bring your own device visualization, enabling capability of multi-windowing, excuse me, multi-windowing capability, and being able for multiple people who have some information to share to simultaneously share that on large format displays, able to manipulate and put things side by side, compare and contrast, becomes very important and helps with contextual decision making when we're able to put everything out in the open when it comes to visualization or multi-user visualization. So I'd like to discuss some sample applications, some use cases that we've been involved with in the past. Excuse me. So first one I'd like to talk about is Rowan University, New Jersey. So going back to the example of visualizing dangerous and challenging scenarios, this is a great example of how that's used. Basically, in areas which flood heavily during storms, they are virtually they're looking at the neighborhoods that typically flood during storms, and they're virtually flooding the area to first see the effects of the rising water levels, but then also planning appropriately their emergency response to such an event. They're also able to plan large events and emergency response to those events. So they actually uh, planned the visit of the Pope to New Jersey. And what they were able to do is obviously visualize or lay out the route the Pope was going to take. Visualize, okay, where are folks going to be standing to see him? How many people can we fit in that area? Where are we going to be locating our emergency services? And what is our response? What is the response planning if something goes bad, right? How are we going to get in? How are we going to get people out? Things like that. So bringing this all back to visualization insights, their planning is critical to making the residents of those areas, making their lives safer. It's absolutely critical having that emergency response plan prepared before anything bad can happen. King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, this was their visualization lab. And essentially this was a lab using visualization as a service. So what they would do is offer their expertise of taking data and processing it to be visualized on different types of systems, from neurology, atmospheric research, building design. So, critical for presenting research results, right? Understanding data, very important, getting insights, but of course, also presenting that to a wider group is very valuable. The United States Health and Human Services, their CAVE system was used in their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. They were tracking early stages of the pandemic before any shutdowns and before shutting down and during any lockdowns. And the data flowing through this facility helped them to determine their actions, as well as what was being presented to the press. So, I mean, extremely important use of visualization of direct impact on people's lives. This is the National Institute for Aerospace Research. Using their visualization system, they're testing different maintenance methodologies on aircraft. So they're testing in real time how a human is able to work on an aircraft, monitoring those results in real time, and ultimately making a technician's job much easier and much safer when it comes to maintaining aircraft. Excuse me. Here we have Manchester Alliance Business School, another system that offers visualization as a service. And here, using data fusion, they were actually overlaying COVID infection locations onto a map of Manchester. And what they did was they identified the location of hotspots to target local lockdowns, meaning if a particular area had a higher incident of COVID infections, they would, rather than lock down all of Manchester, they would only lock down that certain area so that, not everyone was impacted by a small area of contagion. They also do a lot of research into retail environments with an integrated omnidirectional treadmill and eye tracking capabilities. They're able to actually investigate and do, user testing on how we might experience shopping in the future. Final use case example here is Wichita State University. Using captured LiDAR data and importing that into their visualization facility, they're using virtual reality for flight training and other training scenarios. So to summarize my key takeaways, visualization enables multidisciplinary collaboration. Again, we're bringing folks that are studying the problem and folks that are living with the problem together to find solutions. Visualization, we're able to simulate dangerous and challenging scenarios. Every hour we spend planning for disaster, our lives saved when something bad happens. We're able to present findings in humanistic and intuitive ways, basically helping anyone understand complicated topics. Visualization addresses key issues. Visualization is almost ubiquitous in the market, and for good reason, because it's a great diagnostic tool and communication tool for very important issues. Visualization, good visualization is immersive and interactive. The more engaging and interactive content is, the more likely it is to resonate with people, and the more likely it is to be understood. And finally, visualization insights lead to high impact actions. You know, at the end of the day, all visualization is doing is giving us a clear picture of what's going on. But the better we understand the problem, the better the more information we have at hand, the more easy it is to see that, the better we're going to understand the problem, and the better we can design a solution. So with that, thank you for your time, and go into any Q&A there might be.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Ryan. We do have a couple of questions that did come in through the Q&A, so I'll be happy to read those aloud. The first one that we had is, how can we connect multiple centers in different cities so that we can collaborate?
That's a great question. So a few things going on. So first, we need to address the communication challenge. That can be done, you know, right now we're talking over Teams or Zoom these days. So within visualization facilities, you're still going to want to be able to talk to each other in real time and see each other in real time. So the audio video cameras, microphone speakers, you know, communication systems. Now, the more interesting thing is, how do we collaborate on data? How do we manipulate data across the board? You know, this is going back to the software question or the software strategy. We would need to design and integrate the individual packets of software that facilitate the data visualization. And in some cases, we might have to integrate or create software plugins that enable collaboration, right? That might be things like creating avatars so that you can see each other in a virtual environment, or it might just be a way to manipulate data or tag data. So, you know, kind of lots of opportunity, lots of possibilities when we're talking about connecting different visualization centers together in terms of actual communication and then data collaboration.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for that clarification. The next question is, the slides that you show have a lot of different types of displays, walls, rooms, etc. How do we know what type is right for us?
Sure, that's a great question. I guess the short answer, it depends. The long answer is, you know, ideally we want to get into what you're trying to solve for. You know, in different industries, different technologies make sense. Different use cases, different technologies make sense. So it's critical that we first understand the goals. We first understand the visualization challenges you might have, the challenges with getting data from a raw state process to a visualization state, how we want to present that to your wider audience. You know, so understanding all of these goals is critical. And then we would figure out what's the most appropriate technology to make that happen.
Okay, great. And, you know, having those conversations with someone like you is always certainly helpful and key to figuring those things out. The next question we have is, how does data from different sources get combined into one model? For example, the slide that showed flood data also had a map with an overlay of water levels and other information.
Sure, great question. So in that case, they were using the Unity game engine. So, you know, this is the fusion of data. So, you know, so let's start with the map. We might import that map from LiDAR scans of the area, right? We might import that map from, say, Google Maps or some kind of 2D map. So there are various ways of getting access to the map data. Then we might have some simulation data. So the flood data that you saw, the rising water levels, that data would have come from some kind of CFD sim, you know, something from a supercomputer that we then ingest, and then we apply the graphics to then show, you know, how that works. Then we would create some level of interaction. So, you know, interaction to move the world around, interaction to play a certain scenario, maybe to bring in a storm, rise the water levels at a certain point, and visualize certain areas where we might where certain information is quite important. So again, that's the long-winded answer. I guess the short-winded answer is it depends on the data you're trying to import, and it depends on the visualization you're trying to create. But for the most part, where there's a will, there's a way. You know, if you have data that you need to visualize, there's probably a software solution that can either be integrated or created to make that happen.
Okay, great, thank you. And we have one final question, and that is, how long does something like this stay relevant, and how do we keep it going?
Sure, great question. Depends on the industry, depends on level investment. But for the most part, we have clients that still have visualization systems that are about 15 years old. You know, what's critical again is understanding the goals and designing the solution to meet those goals. The better we design for the use cases and the goals, the visualization tasks that you're trying to accomplish, the longer that system is going to stay relevant. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very, very good information. We appreciate you joining us today, Ryan, and just sharing your immense knowledge and experience with this topic. So thanks so much to everyone for coming. And hopefully you were able to gather some great nuggets of information that will be helpful in your workspace. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.